And even now it gets me, because I remember tears just falling from Rodney's eyes. He'd never heard that piece of music, probably would never have been exposed to that type of music, but it did something to him. And you know, he was from a family that their self-care wasn't particularly a priority, and I remember seeing tear tracks on his face. But I was 10 or 11 years old, and I remember seeing that and thinking, there's something so deeply profound that goes beyond the rational here, that has to speak of a quality of a characteristic of the human being that cannot be rationalized.
I'm really aware that there is something out there that we are tapping into, that we're experiencing a bit of in some of those moments. And if you believe that God is love itself, then when we are experiencing that, then we're actually experiencing a bit of God in that moment.
I think when I was about 13, 14, what really got my attention was I used to go for walks at night with the dog and my mum, and I loved watching. I've always loved looking at stars, and it was looking at stars that made me go. And I remember saying to my mum, there's got to be something bigger than all of this.
People have been arguing and debating about the existence of God for thousands and thousands of years. And in this episode, we explain a little bit about why each of us do believe in God. This episode is not trying to persuade anybody else to believe in God, or trying to put forward our best arguments as proof for God's existence. This is simply us just sharing our personal reasons why we do believe in the existence of God. We hope you enjoy this episode. We're a group of normal people, all trying to figure out how to follow Jesus in the 21st century. Despite this thing that unites us, we all have very different views on church, religion, life, and faith. We want to invite you into our conversations so that you too can hear new perspectives, unique ideas, and see that it's okay to be honest about your faith. Welcome to our podcast. He doesn't look happy.
No.
Hello, chaps.
Well, I've got nothing to say to you, Dan, apart from I'm absolutely disgusted.
I'm absolutely disgusted, mate.
What's the reason this time?
Lack of respect. Just, seriously.
What's going on?
I think you might hear the first swear word this evening.
Well, could you just give us a brief reason? Give us a brief reason why you're 35 minutes late.
35 minutes?
Yeah.
20.
20.
What?
Thank you, Steve, for the...
It's not 20. It was quarter to 8. Well, fill your glass first. Yeah, as long as you have to go downstairs again. So that could be another 10 minutes.
No, I don't... You know, and the other thing is the kid has run my headphones into the ground, so I don't have any charge in my headphones, so I've got to find an alternative.
Oh.
Right, I think there might be some in this. Give me a second.
If only you knew that this was going to happen, eh?
You want me to record into QuickTime?
Yeah, if you can.
Bear in mind that last time it went a bit mental.
Yeah, but we knew that straight away, so if it does it again, then go GarageBand, but...
Right. Problem is, though, the mic sound that I've been using on GarageBand,
yeah,
the profile, is going to make it sound very different on this episode.
That's okay. There's only episode 2 in, so as long as we...
Yeah, I know. Okay, I'm going to be straight up with you guys. For some strange reason, I think I've already told you this, Jim.
Yeah.
For some mental reason, my voice sounds whack without any sort of amendment, shall we say.
Hang on. Let me get this straight. You've been recording on GarageBand and then have sent me the file after you've already tweaked your voice. Is that correct?
Correct.
Oh, you...
In what way does it need tweaking?
All right, Steve, I'm going to be straight with you. This is the vulnerability coming out. I have, for some reason, microphones. I have no logical explanation to this, but when I listen to my voice back after having recorded, I sound like a 12-year-old girl.
You don't?
I really do.
Yeah, but I can hear you now.
Yeah, I know, but once it's recorded...
Dan, it doesn't sound any different to when you're saying it live to when it's been recorded.
No, it really does.
I don't think so.
It really does.
If anyone wants to send their comments in to reassure Dan, feel free to leave a review.
So what you need to do is listen to the difference between my natural voice, which is more like episode 1 and 2, having been tweaked and edited, and what Jamie's about to...
That's not your natural voice if you tweaked and edited it, is it?
No, what I'm saying is it's tweaked and edited in order to fit in line with what I actually hear.
We all hear our voices differently.
Nah, sorry. This is crazy.
Anyway,
I'm not having this.
if I need to run it through the same filter that you have, then that's fine. But just for now, just do QuickTime. That would be really helpful.
Right.
I really appreciate it.
I'm running QuickTime now, but I have no idea. I've never used QuickTime, so shall I just drop it just in case?
Drop it, yeah, because QuickTime is very sensitive. But there we go.
Better to boost it.
This is going to be a really productive evening.
Yeah, flipping heck.
I feel like it's not.
Well, if you're going into it with this attitude, both of you, Steve's already said a similar thing. When's this going to end? I'm tired.
I'm tired.
Anyway, hello everyone.
Hello, Jamie.
Welcome to episode 3. Is that enthusiastic enough for everybody?
Exuding.
A bit lackluster.
I thought that today, just to mix up a little bit, I've got a little game for you.
Oh, good.
You excited?
Ooh.
Yeah.
You both look really excited.
What's the game?
So I'm going to stop my video so you can't see this. And you got to tell me truthfully if you can still see me, okay? Right, I'm gone, yeah?
Yep.
So I've got a chocolate bar here. I know, Steve, you like your chocolate.
What are you trying to imply?
I thought there's got to be some...
There was no implication there whatsoever. It was blatant.
So I thought there must be some sort of pro to being away from each other. So the pro is that we can play games like this, which are really fun. This game is called Guess the Chocolate. So I've got a chocolate bar here, and there's going to be a couple of little levels to this. One is going to
Galaxy.
be... No. One is going to be an open, then it's going to be a snap, and it's going to be a chew. And by listening to the sound, you've got to tell me.
This
what
is the
chocolate bar is.
worst sort of game that you could get me to play.
This has no pleasure in it for us whatsoever.
Absolutely hate the sound of people chewing. I hate the sound of packets being opened.
Okay, we're going to have to go for this one. I'm very sorry.
This is horrific.
Okay, ready?
Oh, gosh.
Galaxy.
No. First one to get it wins.
I'm going to go with a Kit Kat.
Incorrect. Ready? Here's a snap. Ooh, do you hear that?
Dairy milk.
Yeah.
Incorrect.
I think if you're going to say something has a snap, it's got the rigidity thing. Perhaps something with a biscuit in it. Am I getting warmer?
Oh, I can't tell you that. You just got to give me a guess.
Can you snap it again?
Yeah.
We could keep this going all night, couldn't we? Is this the kind of like high prime time listening that people want to?
Yeah.
Okay.
I thought they could
fine.
play
I'm
along
just
at home,
checking in.
you know?
It's like play along at home. Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, now for the chew then. Ready?
Crunchy.
Is that... Were you saying it was crunchy, or are you asking whether it was a crunchy?
That's a chocolate bar.
Okay. Incorrect. Dan?
This is not my forte. I'll be honest. Oh gosh,
Go on.
this is.
We may well edit this out.
This is very niche, isn't it? I mean, this is very niche entertainment.
It could be worse. I did imagine one of my ideas was
Is it
I was going
entertainment?
to spread different condiments on a bit of toast, and you've got to guess which condiment it was.
I'm glad you said condiment.
So no guesses, Em.
Well, it's not that I don't have a guess.
We've guessed plenty.
Okay, you got one last guess each.
Oh gosh.
You never know.
Okay.
This could be like some sort of ongoing game throughout the whole series.
The Kit Kat?
Dan's already said that. You weren't listening. The answer is a Jive, which is basically a cheap version of a Twix. I would have accepted Twix.
Oh my
Wow.
gosh.
That's no.
So well done to everyone that
Sorry.
guessed
You
Twix.
didn't even go for a branded chocolate bar.
It's the only one that we've got in the fridge.
Is this going to have some sort of tie-in to the conversation topic that you've allocated for this evening?
No, not at all. Anyway, real quick, how are you both?
Yeah, it's been a bit of a weird day, really, for me. Like, I don't feel like I've got enough done.
Why was it?
Well, you know when you just one of those days that you think, oh, you get up and you're all enthusiastic about what you're going to do,
Yeah.
and then things take forever,
Mm-hmm.
and you think, oh my goodness, this is painful. Yeah, that was it. I did replay. I did replace, if that's the right word, my driveway.
Replaced your driveway.
Well, yeah. So we got this gravel driveway.
Can you be
And,
consistent with your mic placement, please? You 1 minute you're lying back, next minute you're sitting forward. Make up your mind.
Sorry.
Thank you. Carry on.
Well, I fitted this driveway a long time ago. I didn't do it properly, by the sounds of it. Long and short of it is this: I had to fix it very expensively. So I did that today. There you go.
Great.
Just been a bit, not as positive
Okay.
as you'd hope.
We had a bit of drama today. It rained. There's more to it than that. It rained really heavy, and our roof started leaking.
Oh, no.
Snap!
So I had to get on the
Seriously?
roof and like put this massive tarpaulin over the roof of the house to stop.
Did it stop it?
It did, and I had to drill a hole in the ceiling of one of the rooms to let the water through. Yeah, right over our TV as well.
How did you know it was leaking? What, you saw it running down the wall?
Yeah, well, dripping from the ceiling.
Oh crap!
Yeah,
Oh no.
yeah.
Ah.
So I had a mass panic. Everyone had to grab TV, the Wii. Crazy.
Have you got a person to come out and see it?
No. The problem is we're planning on an extension, so that part of the house would be knocked down. So we don't really want to spend any money on it. So it might just be a bit of tarpaulin over there for a while. Anyway, this is really not that interesting conversation, is it? Steve, what have you been up to today?
I just had a busy one. Lots of mostly video calls. I've been in seminary technically, and then spent the afternoon helping get the Sunday sermons recorded and set for YouTube, and then
Oh yes, that joy.
some admin jobs, and here I am. So
Ready to go. Ready to go.
I did discover something. One of the perks of being at seminary online.
Yeah. You can turn it off halfway through.
No, I woke up late
You can mute it.
and I didn't have time for my usual morning bath, and so
What?
Yeah.
What?
And
You have a
so-
morning bath?
Yeah, Steve doesn't have
Absolutely.
showers.
It's the
He's
best
he
thing
has
in the
baths.
world.
Are you serious, Steve? You bath,
Totally.
not shower?
Can't stand showers. They stress me out. And
I'm
so
sorry. That's
it's amazing.
if you're doing well in life, if a shower is the thing that stressed you out.
Well, I then discovered that because we've got a 25-minute mid-morning break, that's a perfect time to go and have a bath. And so I did, came back to seminary, and it was great.
I don't think 25 minutes is long enough for a bath. Does that include a fill-up time? Or are you filled up ready for that 25
Not
minutes?
with the water pressure of this flat, no.
Oh.
I had to go and turn the taps on at the appropriate moment, so it would be just the right timing.
That's good. We've just got an insight into your morning routine. That's great. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, that's very personal, isn't it?
Is everything okay with your microphone?
Keeps falling over.
Yeah, you can hear a little rumble. It's knocking on something as well, by the way.
Rattle.
That's because it keeps falling over.
Oh.
Oh gosh, this is going well, isn't it? Have we had any downloads, by the way? Are we allowed to talk about that on the show?
Well, at this point, we haven't actually released it to iTunes, have we? It's being reviewed currently by Apple, so we'll find out soon. Thankfully, they're not reviewing this one because it would just be a no for boredom. So,
sorry, you're way too boring to be on our store.
Yeah. Anyway, so I thought today, because we potentially got a fair bit to talk about, I think we should just crack straight on.
All right.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. I've literally not been recording.
Are you being serious?
I'm not joking.
Well, thankfully I've been recording Zoom.
There's a great program, Steve, called GarageBand.
I can't believe it. Well,
GarageBand will do that for you.
I had
a
recording.
One of my friends, colleagues, my old job, used to say, we need to do this belt and braces. Does everyone understand what that means?
No.
Yeah. Although anyone that wears belt and braces is a moron.
It means... It's hard to explain, actually. It means
it's
a
not hard
safety
to
net.
explain. It's that you wear belt and braces just in case your trousers fall down.
So I also record the Zoom call.
Okay.
So hopefully, everyone, you should
fine.
now see quite a significant increase in production quality in Steve's mic.
Sorry.
It's a shame because people didn't hear your bath story in the most perfect
I
audio
don't think
quality.
they need to. Yeah.
Okay.
I think they'll live.
I won't ask us to do it again. Anyway, let's move on, shall we? And get going.
Yeah.
Okay, so early on in the series, I thought let's start with something that we all pretty much agree on. Well, I'm assuming so, otherwise this would be a really weird podcast, but the existence of God. And just to clarify, this isn't a conversation about what we're talking about necessarily when we say God, because that could mean different things to different people. I'd imagine it probably does mean slightly different things with us, but we can get onto that on another episode. So yeah, this isn't an argument to prove God either to people. That's not really our aim for this one. It's just for people to get to know us a little bit, perhaps, and to know where we're coming from. So Steve, when we talk about the general belief in God, you had a look at some stats.
I did.
Today.
Yeah.
What did you find?
Well, these are
Talk
old
to me.
stats although for stats they're fairly young in one sense, but they might appear to be old because they're from 2015.
Mm-hmm.
This is the YouGov website, who did a survey in the UK, and the findings were that 33% of those surveyed said they do not believe in God. 32% said they do. 20% said they believe in some higher power but wouldn't call that God. And 14% were unwilling to commit either yes or no. And so, yeah, that's 5 years ago, but that was the scene in the UK.
That's interesting to me because those numbers are the numbers for people that don't believe in God are much lower than I expected.
Really?
I think so. What do you not think the same? You thought
No.
differently.
I'm just still trying to run the numbers. I just like, does that add up?
So say again, Steve. 32%.
33% said no.
Yeah.
32% said yes, and 20% said higher power, and 14% were basically agnostic.
Right. So only those numbers are not sticking in my head. How many said they didn't believe in anything at all? Atheists.
Who said
got
they
a pen,
did not confidently believe in God
Yeah.
was 33%.
Right. So I expected higher, if I'm honest.
Okay.
And what I also think is interesting though is that the belief in God by name, so them actually saying, do you believe in God? And do you believe in a higher power? I'd be interested in what definition they gave to ask the question. Do you see what I mean? Like, what God were some of those people rejecting? Did it say anything about that?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
But I
just wonder
I think you're probably overthinking it more than they are.
No, I just wonder what the difference is between, in someone's mind, between a higher power and the term God. Like, what the difference people are making there in their mind.
I would imagine that when someone references God, the popular imagination is tied to institutional religion. Therefore, like the articulated forms of or articulated definitions of the word God, whereas higher power is a bit more nebulous, isn't it? There's something out there versus a Jewish, Muslim, or Christian, or Hindu, or any other religious perception. I would imagine that that's probably a dividing line. Because I think there are plenty of people that say they believe in a higher power that sits outside of those definitions, because I think a lot of people seem to me to be willing to recognise the mystery of life.
You see, in my mind, I would add those numbers together and say that, what is that, 32% and 20%, 52% of people believe in God.
Yeah, but
I guess it's
definitions
thing.
Definitions is massive, isn't it? Because when you say God, do you mean a singular being with a personality? Or do you mean an impersonal force? You can't. As soon as you get into this, you can't avoid the definitions question.
So you're not surprised by those numbers at all?
Who?
Either of you?
I'm not surprised by those numbers, if I'm honest. Because hey, there it goes.
Hey, there we go. There goes the mic.
It's going to be a pain in the backside.
If you want to take the pop shit off, if it's messing with it, just take it off.
It's fine.
What's it made of, Steve? Paper mache?
Have these mics got no weight to them whatsoever? Your ones?
No.
Are they just really plasticky?
No.
No, mine's pretty. We got the same one.
Yeah, you and Steve got the same one.
Did you not go with it? Did you get a boom, Steve, or did
No.
you just get a stand?
Got a
I
stand
didn't
for the
get. I
table.
got the stand. Yeah, because I didn't know what the arm was like. I didn't know where I could put it. No, I would say I'm not surprised by those numbers, because the number of non-Christians I've spoken to over the years, or even let's just say irreligious people, who do have a consciousness, a belief in God, higher power, or gods.
Yeah.
And it was actually very rare that I ever really met someone who would absolutely, completely never move off their position of belief in no God, or no belief in any God. I'm not sure how to phrase that.
Yeah.
Um,
So when you were, I think we have mentioned this in previous episodes, but when you were a street preacher, what was it?
I've got to say, that sounds gangster.
Yeah.
I've just got to say that out.
I did when I said that out loud. I wondered whether there's a better term.
street preacher, like band member, manic street preachers.
What did you call yourself? What was the official thing?
Street
Steve.
preacher.
A street preacher. Is that it? When you were a street preacher, what was the general objection from people then that you came across? Was it particulars about the God that you were talking about, or was it about the existence of God then?
It was more to do with their own situation, circumstances, sufferings. Why wouldn't God stop this from happening? Why did God allow this to happen? That was the majority of things I was dealing with and subjects people would bring up. Very, very rarely. I mean, you did have people who would obviously bring up the existence of God, and that would always be a starting point. But 99% of the time, it ended up moving off of that to the person having some belief in God. The only person, I can honestly say this, who I've really properly met, who I would say he really doesn't believe in anything, is my brother-in-law. So, but yeah.
How about you, Dan? Similar experience or not?
Yeah, I think the suffering question's huge for people. The numbers do surprise me a little, in as much as I think. Well, then, do they surprise me? That's probably not the right. I think most people within my experience and the experience of that percentage that say they don't believe haven't critically examined their own beliefs. In a large number, I think they're reacting to a surface level question to some extent. Not everyone, obviously, but I think the lack of, and I'm being possibly a little bit unfair here, but the lack of original thinking or personal thinking around why they don't believe, to me, indicates a popular argument about why God is, or the idea of God is inconceivable. And that tends to centre around suffering, and that speaks to me of a popular viewpoint that is parroted more than it is critically examined. Because actually then I want to push back on the moral questions, which obviously surface very quickly when you're talking about suffering, and that's where the surprise comes a little bit, because I think you certainly act as if you believe in God, or you certainly act as if there is some sort of moral structure in your life, because you're actually able to articulate the fact that there is such a thing as suffering. So do you see what I mean? So that's the kind of reaction I hear. That's the reaction I have, when I hear those figures, because I think the amount of people I hear speak of no God, but yet use very Christian articulations of morality, or very Judeo-Christian articulations of how society should function. To me, it just says this isn't something you've thought about. This is something you're reacting to. And some of those reactions are genuine and need to be recognised, and they are valid.
Yeah.
But that's my response, I suppose.
Yeah,
I've got to say, I feel like I'm not firing all cylinders today, folks. There's probably a few drinks in.
No, you're
This
good.
is the problem.
You're good.
Okay.
I like that. I actually think I have always actually looked to suffering in a way as an evidence for God.
Right.
To me, so I haven't explained this before on the podcast, but before I was a filmmaker or left to start my business, I worked for a bereavement service. So a big part of that job was obviously working with families and children who've had someone in their life die, often in quite traumatic ways. And I remember throughout that time, that could have led me to kind of really move further away from the idea of God when you see that amount of pain and suffering. But it's in a weird way that kind of had the opposite effect.
Right.
I think
Why?
Well, this is what's interesting about the definitions thing, because I think I did move away from perhaps some of the definitions that people give God of this is all in God's plan and all that kind of stuff. Like that kind of stuff started to be eroded away. But the fact that people were legitimately in pain indicated to me that there's something wrong in this situation.
Right.
That this isn't the way things should be.
Yeah.
And like you say, we're all living like there is a better thing possible.
I think that's been my experience of when you really drill down with people, how they can even articulate something wrong. It's kind of inference. It's inference, isn't it? You kind of doing theology from the negative by saying, okay, and I think all of the traditions have got this at some level. Certainly within the Christian tradition, the recognition of Christ as the suffering servant, the one who shoulders pain. That's kind of like a base level human experience, but we all are unsettled by it. Why?
Yeah.
Why are we unsettled by pain and suffering? Because we can conceive of or perceive the possibility of a better way of life. Therefore, that there's an innateness about that goes beyond societal constructions.
Yeah.
So, like, you can infer the existence. Oh, it doesn't infer the existence. That's not fair, really. I think that's actually quite a weak argument. It doesn't infer the existence. It affirms. You can infer from it people's belief in a God.
Yeah.
Rather than let's be honest. Like, the idea that we can confirm the existence. We're talking about matters of faith here. So if you're looking for hard proof, you're going to turn up, you're going to be in problems.
So I wondered whether a nice way of doing this would be, because I think it would be interesting for people that are getting to know us to kind of understand individually perhaps where we've, I don't know, what's led us to believe in the existence of God. So I wonder whether it'd be good if we each had a quick bash at a quick explanation of how we have come to where we are. And I'm happy to go first, if you guys are happy with that.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Feel free to obviously chip in and interject. But I guess for me, it really surprised me today when I was doing a bit of prep for this. I know you guys have done no prep. It surprised me a little bit about how kind of difficult it was to come up with a coherent explanation. And I think it's important to say at the beginning that it would be really dishonest of me if I said that there was this one moment in my past where I first believed in God, and then ever since then without any variance at all. I've 100% believed every day. There's definitely days and weeks where I really feel the craziness of even the idea. And I guess it's like you were saying, Dan, I guess it's in those moments where that's the whole point of faith. If I was completely certain all the time, then I don't really see the point of describing yourself as having a faith in any way. And I think I was always brought up to believe that faith and certainty are like basically the same thing, and I don't think that anymore. I think faith and certainty are very different and probably opposites from each other. So it's actually hard work for me to believe in God, to be honest. It doesn't come naturally, and I have a lot of sympathy, I think, for those people that don't believe.
Well, I suppose you live that on a day-to-day basis, don't you? That functional faith that sees you through your day. Like, I know this is a bit of a twee example, but it's the best one off the top of my head. Like, I've never got in a car. I probably should do this, but I've never got in a car and prior to getting in the car, check the tyres or... I know this example is often trotted out, but that is a real functional... No one... We're faith beings, aren't we? Is that we just assume that it works. But often that illustration is used as confirmatory rather than actually... You just do it, even though you're aware that occasionally cars do break. You still functionally live with, on a day-to-day basis, just jump in the car, because it'll go.
Yeah. And so I guess I just wanted to say all that earlier on because I didn't want to give the impression that I was one of those people that were on it like 100% of the time without ever having any long periods of not being sure. Because there's this like, I don't know, there's this thing in the Christian world where it's almost honourable to admit that you have a doubt, but that's only if it like lasts for less than a day or something. Like,
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, people within Christians growing up, it was really cool to go, it's okay, man, I've got doubts. But like, only if that extended too long, then that's not a doubt, that's like backsliding.
Or it didn't touch any major subjects, right?
Yeah.
It's like...
Yeah, so like for people who are out there who are perhaps experiencing some a long period of not being sure, or kind of doubts that last longer than the accepted amount of time, I just wanted to put it out there that that's quite normal, I think. So don't expect that everybody is always sure all the time. That's just simply not true.
Yeah.
Having said all that, I think I've got about two main reasons. One of them I'm aware is really naff, by the way. And I would never like use this to try and argue or debate with someone because it's just a bit pants.
Yeah, but that's
but you
the
might,
point.
but you might send it live on a podcast.
No, but this podcast, the point is not
you
for
said
me
it.
to try and convince someone. This is about me explaining how I've come to this place.
Got ya.
So this would never work as trying to convince somebody else, but it's just me being honest about what has led me to where I am. And that's just an innate deep feeling down in my gut that I just can't shift, which may be a surprise to you for me to go to an emotive, feelings-based reason, because I'm not really like that.
Really? You're such a weepy person. You're so
Cries
emotional.
all the time, every day.
All the time. Every time anything emotional comes on the TV.
Always talks about his
Can't-
feelings. Can't shut him up when he
Talks about
begins.
his feelings. Can't
Yeah.
yes, like, oh, goodness me, I've run out of tissues.
Note the sarcasm, listeners.
No, Jamie doesn't share feelings or cry when other people are around.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever. No, I have. I've seen you cry twice.
What?
That's quite a lot.
Twice. That's a lot.
Twice?
twice.
I'm his brother, and I've never seen him cry.
Seen him
Oh
cry
no,
twice.
once I saw him cry when I chopped his finger off. And just to be clear,
Yeah,
viewers, it was an
that's true.
accident.
You did, yeah.
Viewers,
Yeah.
hearers, listeners.
That was very painful.
Yeah.
Yeah, anyway, so what was I saying? Yeah, there's this feeling
Yeah.
that I can't ever shift, really. And even if I have times where I'm really convinced all this is a load of rubbish, I think that's the thing that kind of keeps cropping back up. This feeling that there's has to be something more. And I don't mean like in some kind of I'm thinking about my death, and there's got to be something after this type of thing, although that probably does come into it a little bit. I think kind of what I mean is like in those everyday moments where you experience something that's so like pure, and that sounds really cheesy, but I mean like if you've ever been with your kids and you see them like purely happy, like they couldn't possibly be happier, and that feeling that you have of love in that moment, that you're all kind of experiencing together, it doesn't really feel like that's something that you're creating or manufacturing in that moment. It kind of feels like that's something that you're tapping into, that you're taking part in, that's separate from yourself, that you're getting a glimmer or a glimpse, or that you're involved in something bigger than yourself in that moment. And it's not just like in that moment with your children. I kind of feel like that in quite a few things, like Christmas really gets me. Big crowds of people all gathering together, unified, especially like singing together. There's something about those moments where it's like we're experiencing something here that's beyond the material, that we're getting a glimpse into something bigger and separate from ourselves. Obviously, when I say it touches me, I mean internally.
I shed tears in my heart.
Yeah.
How is that possible? It's just not possible.
Do you know? It's like the equivalent. It's like the equivalent of internal bleeding. It's like internal weeping.
It's like when crowds are together and the crowds are all singing the same thing, or there's some sort of unifying thing going on in the crowd of people. It just gets me, like, so, I don't know, there's something about that. And there's little things like that. When I see someone completely happy, I kind of feel like in that moment you're getting a glimmer or a glimpse into something that's bigger than the feelings that we might experience, you know? So that is a really fluffy, emotional, pretty rubbish reason, but it's got its hold on me, and every time that I can't reason my way back into something, that gets me back. And believe it or not, I actually studied philosophy at A level, and it's so weird because those kind of logical arguments don't seem to have any real impact on me anymore at all. Like, if you can trick someone into believing in God through some sort of logical sequence, that kind of feels a bit like trickery to me. Whereas nowadays it's kind of more of the emotional, more subjective reasons that seem to have more of an impact.
How does Anna feel about this? This emotional.
About what?
The emotional attention. Is this showing up anywhere?
No, probably
else?
not. It's only as I've prepped this.
No, it's
He's only sharing
Still
his emotions
steely.
with us,
Yeah.
so she's going to be
it's
annoyed.
lovely. It's beautiful.
Probably. Yeah, no. I'm not. So
Yeah,
I'm not saying.
I hear what you're saying.
I'm not talking about me weeping all over the place. I'm just saying that I'm really aware that there is something out there that we are tapping into, that we're experiencing a bit of in some of those moments. And if you believe that God is love itself, then when we are experiencing that, then we're actually experiencing a bit of God in that moment, if that makes sense.
Why do you think that's not that great?
Yeah.
Because it doesn't prove anything. Because people can have gut feelings about things that are completely incorrect, and that's why I say like I would never use that as an argument for, because it can fall apart so easily, and that's like I think what I mean by it being a bit naff.
Right. Do you think also it's something to do with your own experience of nurture? I mean, partly because I share parents with you, is that we were always pushed for logical argument, the ability to produce empirical results that you could tangibly point to and say, I mean, like across our upbringing, I mean, we were shaped by logic, fiercely so.
Yeah.
Because of the way, I'm sure Dad's probably going to listen to this at some point, and so there you go. Sorry, Dad. But
Yeah.
do you know what I mean? There was an emphasis, shall we say, on the logical thing that placed that as a higher value than the emotional aspect. It's not that they were necessarily incongruent. It was more, this is so takes priority versus that.
Yeah, probably. They might play into it a little bit, but I haven't swung entirely the other way either. Like, I'm pretty sure that I'm not going to be able to prove anything. Not that we could anyway, but that the emotional stuff isn't going to prove anything, really. You know, people have whack views about, or whack gut feelings about lots of things. It just doesn't mean that that's correct still. Even if, yeah. Anyway, the second reason is perhaps a bit more of a classical Christian answer, and I hope I've nicked yours so that you have to think of a new one.
You almost certainly have. Go on.
And that is, for me, the historical evidence of Jesus. And I don't just mean the New Testament text. I think I've probably got a more conservative view than you, Dan, but more of a liberal view than Steve. So I'm not really referring to those necessarily. I think without them, I would still hold what I hold. I guess I just mean the impact that that story, and I don't mean fictional, by the way, but the impact that that story and those messages had in the early few centuries against all the odds as well, like the persecution that they faced, for them still to be able to flourish as they did. I haven't really heard of a better explanation than that there must have been something in that. Especially if people say that they're making it up. I just think there must be something there for it to have got as far as it got within, a few hundred years becoming a state religion. I'm not saying that's necessarily a good thing. But I'm just convinced that there must have been something in it for it to get as far as it did, and the impact it's had even to today. And you kind of look back and think, what was the kind of driving force for them? It was this idea, this story that Jesus had risen from the dead, and we don't need to get into all the details of that. Like proof for or against. I personally am pretty convinced that that must have been true. And I kind of know that sounds a bit crazy, particularly to some people that are listening. But I think that's where I start from. I find it hard to start from some of the places other people start from, where they kind of go to the big divine instantly and then get to Jesus. I kind of work backwards in a way, if you can say that, where I'm kind of convinced by the evidence and by the things I've just talked about that there must be something true in the story that we've been told, and if you accept that, you're kind of forced into the rest of it. And I kind of think that's what I mean by the faith thing. Like, that isn't something I would naturally want to go near. Like, that's not my natural tendency isn't towards the spiritual, but I think I have to go there, even if I don't feel like I really want to. I can't tell if Steve's frozen.
No, I'm not frozen. I'm thinking and processing. I'm really curious to kind of hear Dan's point of view in terms of why he believes in God. Don't want to just rush off from where
Cheers,
you've
Dave.
been, Jim, but because for me, I'm interested as someone who is not part of your family, did not have the same upbringing as you, and if there's differences, similarities to your reasonings, but yeah, that's kind of. I mean, feel free not to rush off from that if you want, but that's.
No, that's fine. I there are some questions I'd love to ask Jamie, and maybe we'll get to them over the next few weeks. I find the whole historical perspective quite interesting, because I mean, not that I want to strip your reasons from you, because they're clearly important to you, but I wonder whether there's some thinking to continue on the rise of the early church, because, as you say, it's not a proof, but it surfaces enough questions to pursue, and I think that's important. Yeah, I mean, I think when it comes to history, you're still faced with the same set of questions about whether you are willing to believe the claims. I don't think there's any question about, in a broad sense, about the claims that are being made. I think there's general agreement on what the claims are, namely the historical event of the resurrection, a bodily resurrection, I say. You know, the detail around the crucifixion, the teachings of the one that they called Messiah. I think those claims are fairly well established if you want to take history, and I mean history in its broadest sense, like the data that you would happily take from other sources. You've got to apply the same kind of scrutiny to the New Testament. I think it still has to resolve on your personal commitment to take those claims seriously.
Yeah.
And I think then you're into the territory of your first reason, because that becomes inherently subjective about your own experience, which steps away from the question of proof and away from reason, logic, into this experience of the transcendent.
Well, I don't know about that, because I think the resurrection is crazy that's not something I would believe in subjectively. No. Like, that's not something that I would lean towards emotionally or anything like that. The reason why I believe it is primarily because I can't see any other real explanation, and that is down to reason, and reason and evidence for me has led me to that position. Otherwise, there's no way I would naturally want to go there.
But all of the claims of the I guess what I'm trying to say is all of the apostolic claims around the resurrection are of the order that you're talking about of number one. Their own personal experiences of the risen Jesus. And so I want to say those two things are actually connected.
Yeah.
So I don't think that you need to drive such a sharp wedge between reason one that you give and reason two, because that is the stuff of history. That's recorded experience, do you know what I mean? And that's where I would go. So for me, at a very personal level, I encountered, albeit within a limited range of understanding as a young person, I'd been taught a set of doctrines that I've now come to recognise that they're not doctrines that I would agree with, but even within that context of teaching and training, I experienced something of the divine. I was 11 years old. I was walking across Dunstable Baptist car park, and I just experienced something that I can't explain. And for the very fact that I can't explain it, it pushes me into a space where I have to say that to me is largely part of a definition of the divine, the unexplainable, and it was a very personal encounter with Jesus. And I suppose you just have to get comfortable with the fact that people will say, no, you didn't. And I say, okay, fine. That's not going to strip it from me. So that would be so similar to you, the experience of something, the subjective feeling of encounter in a child's laugh. You're watching your child grow, or for me, you've already referenced it, music is a huge thing. I would class myself as an evolutionary theist. Like I think that from as far as we understand the science, it seems to me to be a good theory that fits the bill. We may find that it's wrong. We probably will find that elements of it are wrong. But music it baffles my mind. It's like, how is it that we can at some level emotionally understand that a G chord fits with a C chord? Like, where does that come from? Where's that sense of rhythm? And I remember one of the most powerful encounters I think I ever had with that level of human emotion, connected with this idea of transcendence, was, I think I was in year 6. There was a young lad in there called Rodney Smith. He was raised in a travelling family. He had such a difficult life, and he'd been bullied quite significantly. And I remember them playing in our music class. I remember them playing O Magnum Mysterium, and one of the most powerful pieces of choral music you'll ever hear. And even now it gets me, because I remember tears just falling from Rodney's eyes. He'd never heard that piece of music, probably would never have been exposed to that type of music, but it did something to him. And he was from a family that their self-care wasn't particularly a priority, and I remember seeing tear tracks on his face. Even when I was in year 6, I must have been what's year 6? 10, 12? Yeah.
10
I
or
was
11.
10 or 11 years old, and I remember seeing that and thinking, there's something so deeply profound that goes beyond the rational here, that has to speak of a quality of a characteristic of the human being that cannot be rationalized. But like I say, over the years, the doctrines, like the definitions and the understandings have shifted and changed. And I think, we were talking earlier this week, one of the lyrics is from a U2 tune that sticks in my mind at this moment, is something like, the more you see, the less you know, the more you find out as you go. I knew much more then than I do now. And actually, that certainty that you were talking about has disappeared over the years. Like, I'm less sure, I'm less certain, but I've deepened my faith. Like, I'm willing to take more on faith than I ever have, because I still keep going. Not because I know, but because I believe. So a similar first reason. The history thing for me is a little bit more tricky. I'm still working some of that stuff out, because I think you bank too much on history. There are just too many variables at play there for me to be able to say. I think that's history is theology's equivalent of science. And what I mean by that is our theology's recourse to history to answer first the question of did it happen is the same kind of post-Enlightenment questions that people asked of science. Like, how can we factually prove this is the case? Which is, again, a grasp after certainty. And I just think you need to be really careful with that, because, I mean, we've all met folk. There may be people in our churches. We may even go through periods of this. We may be in a season of that now, where we're like, this Bible story. Pick one, for example. Noah's Ark. It has to happen. It has to have happened as the text described it. And we place so much store in that historical retelling that the day we find out that it didn't quite happen that way, or we find out that actually this was a story that had been told across cultures and had been amended and edited, the house of cards comes tumbling down, because we've actually not put our faith in the story of God and God's people. We've put our faith in history.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's a very nuanced, difficult thing to navigate, because clearly there are things in this text, and I'm talking now about the Christian scriptures, that are not historical. And so if I'm to be careful about how I articulate my faith in God, I should be careful about that particular nuance.
I've got a couple of questions for you.
Go on.
But firstly, I don't know if you noticed when I said about mine, I said I'm not specifically talking about New Testament accounts. Part of that is because, in a way, if that kind of wasn't even there, for me, the evidence of, the whole like, by the fruit you shall know them type thing.
Yeah.
The way that the world has just changed, for me, is enough to at least go, something here is worth exploring. So it's not like I'm just relying on the Bible accounts. There's more to it than that for me. That is part of it. So, but my question to you was, when that thing happened when you were 11, did you immediately, was that it? Or was it a bit of processing?
No.
Or what?
I mean, I've been all over the place. There are some days, sometimes, as you say, stretching into longer periods of time, where I catch myself as what was my lecturer's phrase? A functional atheist, because I'm happy just to crack on without any consideration, even going through the motions of religiosity. Like, it's easily done, it's routine, it's learned behaviour. And you think, and then you catch yourself and you're like, oh shit, I haven't really sat down and given myself to this. I haven't really pursued God in a meaningful way. So this morning was a real reset moment for me. As I sat outside, I got up early, sat outside, just had some quiet, some space. I didn't open scripture. I didn't open the Bible. I sat and read a nature fiction, and I just listened to the sounds of the birds, and I watched a woodlouse make its way across the gravel, and I just couldn't believe the intricacy of this animal, and it gripped me for about 10 minutes. I just watched it make its way, and just the story I was telling myself, and I just thought, what, there's so much here in the world around us, that inescapable feeling that sits in the gut level. Is like, whenever I doubt it, you come back to the whole thing about chance. It's like, this feels too much of a gift, this life thing. Do you know what I mean? It's like, this doesn't feel like a random it doesn't feel like a random happening. It feels like a gift, because it comes with all sorts of emotion and all sorts of feeling. I mean, you can layer all of the theology on top of this, but if you're asking me at like the core deep level,
I think so.
Why do I believe? Then that's probably primary, and then I would go similar route in terms of talking about the person of Jesus. And we'll get into this, I'm sure, over the next few weeks. It's like, he as an individual completely captivates me, because I think he seems to be the most incredible human being that has ever or could ever walk the earth.
Yeah.
And like you, I want to start with that before I question and come up with formulas for the divine, because I think that's enough of a miracle, right?
Hmm.
Like what he pulled off in his time and place, that's enough to surface a hell of a lot of questions around, well, where did that all come from?
Yeah.
You know,
Cool.
in the context of a Roman Empire. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
Crazy stuff.
Yeah. I didn't know that thing. I didn't know that about you when you were 11.
What with Rodney?
No, about you walking across the car park.
Yeah, I just burst into tears, man. Like I was sat in the back of the car. I don't know where you were.
Probably off chasing the women.
Oh yeah, round the graveyard.
Around those gravestones. Yeah, great.
You weren't allowed to do anything when you caught them, though. We were Baptists.
Yeah, side hug was all you're allowed.
Yeah. Steve,
Cool.
come on, man. Like, you've been too
Steve sat
quiet.
here very quietly.
I've just been listening to your stories. I
We've
think
discussed.
not discussed.
Like, oh, what have I got myself into?
I
these
think
heathens.
intrigue, because I think my story is very different to both of you.
Smashing.
And I think where I'm at theologically is very different to the pair of you. But that's the point of the podcast. So, for me, I wasn't brought up to believe in God. He was not in my thinking. I had categories, of course. Went to a Christian-ish, like a normal British school, which was in a village, had a C of E vicar who came in every now and again.
Did you sing hymns?
Probably, nah.
No.
Did we?
Not like
If anything, the
Lord of the Dance.
only song I would have ever known was Lord of the Dance. Yeah. So I think that's probably where I first heard about God. I don't actually know. No one made the effort to teach me what God was, as far as I can recall. Whereas I think you would have been hearing a lot about a God.
yeah.
Yeah. Wouldn't shut up about him.
And so
That was Dan, by the way, Dad and Mum. Carry on.
So actually, I was really thinking about this because you were saying, Jamie, about how you didn't start with God. Well, I did. For me, Jesus was some bloke that a vicar used to come and tell me about, and he did some magic stuff. That was literally my thinking of it. And I never thought of... I knew the claim of his being risen from the dead, but for me, it didn't have any claim on my life or my thinking, nor did I think it made any claim on my life or thinking. So I was carried on. I was so blasé about the subject. It does depend what day you catch me. I don't know if I was an atheist or not. It just wasn't in my thinking. So if that makes me an atheist, fine. But I think it's a disservice to atheists like Ricky Gervais and Richard Dawkins to say I was an atheist, because I hadn't thought about it. I think that's just the category I was in. Probably believed in a spiritual realm, but not weird. And so I think when I was about 13, 14, what really got my attention was I used to go for walks at night with the dog and my mum. And I loved watching. I've always loved looking at stars, and it was looking at stars that made me go. And I remember saying to my mum, "There's got to be something bigger than all of this," because I look at the stars and I just go, "We're so tiny," and I didn't know what. Then, and sorry, I almost have to tell the story of how I became a Christian to actually explain why I believe in God. Mm-hmm. It was when I kind of started talking to, I became friends with a Christian, and this Christian, apart from the vicar, was like the first real Christian I'd ever met. And then, to cut a long story short, I started going to Bible studies where he was. And some of the things that were just said just clicked for me. And I think that it answered the questions I had about the universe. As I was thinking things through, I started to think that this couldn't have all come by itself. I don't accept the idea, even before I was a Christian, when I was thinking about it, that nothing can come from something. Something can come from nothing. Can come from something, often does, but something can come from nothing, all by itself, with no intelligent design, no primary moving force. I was more Aristotelian. How do you say that word?
Aristotelian.
Yeah, that one.
Aristocats.
I was more like him.
Aristocats. Yeah.
And then, kind of as I was asking questions, Christianity seems to have some answers. There's lots of other things as well in there, I think, that probably wouldn't be most productive to go into. Just my thinking was changing, and for me that was an evidence that there was a God. And I know, and like you two both, I think that for many isn't any sort of evidence. But I really believe that there is just no reason for me to believe in God without that change occurring. Like I was resisting all the way because I was looking at my mate, and now he was telling me about Jesus. I was seeing how he lived, and it was very different to me. I saw some of the things that he wouldn't engage in that I was quite happy to engage in, and I was just like, I don't want this. And I was actively, and I knew I had an idea of how my family might react if I ever took this too seriously. And so I was resisting it all the way. Inwardly, I wasn't a rebel or anything like that. But there was something that was always drawing me. Something was really always drawing me. So I said I wouldn't go into it, but I remember sitting on my bed at night and just things running through my head, and I got scared because I was like, why am I thinking about this? Why am I actually, what is this? And yeah, there's just something drawing me there. The clincher for me is, again, very similar to Jamie. But I think I'd probably be stronger in terms of scripture and associating God with my belief in scripture.
Do I need to clarify? What do you mean by that? What did you get about my view of scripture from what I said? You may be right. I just want to make sure that I haven't bodged it.
I think I would just be this is probably going to go into something different though. That's my hesitancy.
We'll say it, and then we can park it if we need to. We can put. Jamie's got the list, right?
I struggle. I would struggle, if I'm honest, to continue calling myself a Christian if I were to disbelieve the historical accounts of Jesus, particularly, and to kind of go, I can't trust them.
I think perhaps I do need to clarify then slightly.
Go for it. Yeah.
I think what I was trying to say was that without them, I don't think I need them to still have the feeling that I have around the events of the early church. What I was trying to say was that I do actually hold them very highly historically, but they're not like the clincher for me. That's all.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I also can I also throw in a clarification on my side as well, if that's all right. I think because I'm answering the question, why do I believe in God, which is a very broad, generic question. If Jamie was asking, and if we were discussing and batting around the question, why am I Christian?
Which we will, by the way, soon.
Yeah, so why this particular expression of faith and this particular course of faithful living, as it unfortunately is sometimes unfaithful living, but that whole wrestling, then I would be pointing very clearly to Scripture, and I would want to again nuance the whole thing about history, because I hold those accounts very, very important. Without them, I would not know who Christ was in my own experience. Now, I do believe it's possible to meet Jesus without the accounts of Scripture, because I've got friends that have met Christ without the Bible, which is an interesting thing even in and of itself. So that would be the nuance I'd want to add in, because we're batting around the kind of metaphysical conversation around this being. I'm happy to kind of park the. Is that helpful? Is that
That's
helpful?
really helpful.
Okay.
Yeah. I think so. So for me, I think when I think the change in my mind was so radical. I mean, I'm talking. I don't know if this is coming across that it feels like this is going on for years. This was only going on for a few months, and I've now been someone who believes in God a lot longer than I ever was someone who was completely apathetic to it. But for me, the thing that's always brought me back to faith in God is the resurrection of Jesus Christ and the risen Jesus, and not just the historical accounts, but also believing that He has personally changed my life, and that He was the only one who could really do that. Right. Because I went from one day having no intention of taking God seriously, no real thoughts, no solid belief in. Sorry, I'm saying solid, and after everything that's been said, but no kind of just blasé about it, very blasé about it, and uninterested, completely uninterested. The change in my thinking was can be illustrated in my RE lessons. I hated RE at religious education, hated it. You would never ever have heard me comment or put my hand up and talk in RE ever. the weekend after I had come to Jesus by faith, my hand went up, and my RE teacher was so surprised she shut everyone else up in the middle of this huge debate and was like, Stephen needs to talk, because this was the first time in my entire school life that I'd actually had anything to say in RE.
His preaching started from there.
He really did.
I would have loved to have been in that room.
Yeah.
How did it go? How did it go down?
There as well.
What did, is it like lead balloon?
Let's put it this way. I'm going to throw him under the bus. I don't care. The people who had been in that class who were Christians and had been trying to convince me to become a Christian suddenly pretended like they didn't know me, and the Muslims loved me.
I bet they did.
And they, in terms of, they were like, you were just being honest about God, and we agree with you. And thanks for actually saying it how it should have been said, because we wanted to say the same, but we're a bit too afraid. And I was just like, what did I do? I've offended everyone. I can't remember what I said, but yeah. But it was like, I can't keep this quiet. And before, I just could not care less. And so for me, that was just, I just don't think, for me, people can go talk about psychology of that and everything. That's fine. I know myself. I know my family. That just wasn't something that I would have cared about, I think. And within 24 hours, all of that changed by what I believe was meeting Jesus by faith.
Mm. Can I ask a question there, Steve? So
of course you can.
I know we're gonna navigate this through the course of this, but like in a couple of sentences or so, would your articulation of the God that you came to faith in then be the same now? Like, are you? I'm trying to tread a fine line here without wanting to kind of uncover the definitions question, which we'll go into in next week or whatever. But is there could you quickly say whether that's been a journey, or whether it's from then till now, or whether it's been that's pretty solid? Like, what I came to at that moment has largely remained unchanged.
That's a really difficult question, because it was a surprise to me that Jesus was God.
Right.
I didn't even think that ever until like probably a couple of months after being a Christian. I was like, oh, right, okay, wow, that's big, and I was just learning. I at that point I couldn't have told you what God was, who God was, what the Bible taught.
Right.
I had no idea. First thing I went and did was buy a Bible.
Okay.
And start reading it every night. Just couldn't put it down. Because I was like, I need to catch up.
Yeah.
Because I was like, I don't know any of this.
Like, let's binge this. Like, let's box it.
Yeah.
I'm really surprised, because unless I just misheard, did you just say that you became a Christian before you knew that Jesus was God?
Yeah.
No, that is a surprise.
I just didn't have a category for him being God.
Like, he's just dropped that.
No, but that's interesting, because this is so hard not to go down other routes, isn't it?
Well, this is the thing. Everything's connected.
Everything is
That's
connected.
Yeah.
Because my assumption of that for you would have been that your definition of a Christian is pretty integral to the idea that Jesus is God.
Say again.
It surprised me, because I would have assumed that your definition of being a Christian had some sort of, I accept that Jesus is God, he died for my sins, blah 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 blah. But at that point,
Great.
no, you know what I mean.
I love that. It's like, imagine if that had been in the Apostles' Creed.
Yeah,
Like, Jesus God, blah 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 blah.
yeah. So that's just perhaps a wrong assumption I had, but that's how I expected you to define being a Christian.
I would say that's part of Christian discipleship, and that's something that the Bible teaches, and one of the what I would say is a foundational truth of Christianity. But I think first and foremost, it's faith in Jesus and the person of Jesus, and so I don't think that's controversial.
I think I think it is controversial in that a lot of people wouldn't articulate it that way. I just think you've been very honest about your own journey. I think if the problem is that a lot of people try and systemize, do you know what I mean? Like they like structure this out doctrinally, ordo salutis, like get the order of salvation, whatever their articulation of that particular formula is. It's like you have to have this stacked up in the right order. And for me, just what I'm hearing in our own stories, like the three of us, what we've just clearly articulated is just the incredible breadth in this journey, that you can't create a roadmap for this.
Yeah,
like everyone's different.
And I think the conversation, we need to save this for the what is a Christian thing, because I think that's really fascinating.
Yeah,
because 100% my upbringing was to be a quote Christian is to A, believe that you're a sinner, B, Jesus died in your place, who is God, 3, he rose again, he forgiven you for your sins, blah blah blah. So like that's fascinating to me, but we'll save that.
I have some stories on those, all of those.
Yeah, I'm sure you have. This has taken a turn for me. I'm now like I'm here for this.
Well, you're too late.
I know, but it's just like I've suddenly kicked into this. I'm like, oh right, we're gonna unpick some of this, because there've been a number of phrases that we've all used tonight that I thought, we should really unravel that.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh gosh, this is good.
It's gonna be great. Is there more to your story, Steve? Since that moment, me and Dan have both said about some sort of level of uncertainty, if you want to call it that. How about you? Is that something that you've found too, or is it quite an easy thing now for you to believe in God?
Yeah, I'm struggling to relate to you on that one.
Okay.
But I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that's just different, coming from different places. I think I'm not. Yeah, I couldn't imagine not believing. Not that you're saying you are, but I don't think of my faith being uncertainty. I would say actually, my faith gives me. I think these phrases are difficult. I think my faith does give me certainty, but not in the way you guys are probably talking about it.
Right.
So, but that's
it's something functional, right? Like you can live with it. That's what when I talk about certainty, it's like certainty is, in my imagination, the realm of facts in as much as 2 + 2 = 2, but you can never articulate a relationship in that way.
Yeah.
Because that's the realm of empirical rational logic. Like they're not the tools with which to articulate a relationship or a journey with the divine, as far as I can tell.
I think I would be very much with you in terms of certainty in the person who I'm trusting in. But that leads us on to a different subject anyway. I would also say give certainty in not in every detail. I think that would be dishonest to say every detail, but I think there are answers that he gives that I trust in the way I believe that they're taught by him. But that's a subject, I guess, for another day, where which we'll look into.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sweet.
This has been good.
So I mean, I'm sure there's lots of people that are listening that could probably pick holes in all of our thoughts and arguments. Although they're not arguments, they're just reasons for us believing. But I guess that's not the point of this, is it?
No, and I also think it's worth saying at this point, it's one of the strange phenomena of particularly Christian scripture, but by extension a lot of Jewish material. I'm not as familiar with the Quran, so listeners that may be part of that tradition have to forgive me, but many of the mainstream religions don't make an argument for the existence of God. There's an assumption there, because there is that relational element about the accounts that are being delivered and the stories that are being told. It's not kind of a systematized defense of. That's the work of philosophy and things after. So I think we're standing in the tradition here by saying, what's our experience? Like, what have we encountered and what have we learned? Like, these are the ways that people of faith have always wrestled with this stuff.
Yeah, and just a real quick thing about the whole doubt thing. I wonder whether, and me and Steve have talked about this before, but I think that people who have been brought up within the church or a church environment of some kind, I think because they've always been told to live, or I don't know if you want to call it told or taught to live in a certain way, there's often not the stories of dramatic kind of transformation that people who are non-church goers have. So I wonder whether in our kind of stories, at least in mine, there's not a lot I can point to that Steve can, for example, of like this really dramatic transformation that I then really can never doubt, because I've seen the evidence before my eyes in my own life. There's not much of a behaviour change or lifestyle change to people that have been brought up in the church. So in a way that might be easier for non-church people. I'll be interested to see if there's any studies around that. That'd be fun. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, my wife, Jen, she came to faith later in life, and she would say that. She would say, often in our discussions, she said, you have no idea what it's like to not have faith. Like, you've always had it.
Yeah.
And the kind of places you go to at all different levels, like cognitively, spiritually, ethically, morally, all of those things, they're not conditioned by the parameters that faith lays out for you. And it's not necessarily to say that you can't experience some of those stuff across the divide, but there is definitely an internal change within you. Yeah. So actually the faculties with which you might deal with those challenges are fundamentally different. And if you've moved from one to the other, you know the benefit of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or perhaps not even the benefit. For some of us, like, I certainly feel there are times where I look, this is me being really honest, is like, there are some times when I think, man, it would be so much easier It's like have you guys seen The Matrix?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you seen The Matrix, Steve?
Yeah.
Sometimes there are times where like I want to be Cypher and just plug in to the Matrix and be like, ignorance is bliss.
Yeah.
Because I mean, if you're gonna open, and this kind of goes back to why the numbers are interesting around the stats. It's like, if you unplug yourself and become aware of these questions, it screws you over. Like, you can't just to use your phrase, Steve, it makes demands on your life. It makes a claim on your life. You know, you can't just park a question like God as if it doesn't matter, because it profoundly unsettles and reshapes your whole way of being. Like, however you answer that question, once it's surfaced, you're unplugged.
Yeah.
No more ignorance for you.
Great. Well, this is going to be a fun one to try and edit, because this has gone on for a while.
Yeah.
But that's all good.
Take out all my stuff.
No, it's all important.
Just rambling.
It's all good.
Take out the game.
The game. I love the game. What are you on about?
The chocolate game.
I personally think the game was the best bit.
Awful. It's awful.
Okay.
It would have been better if I'd have eaten the chocolate.
Why?
It would have been better if it was a Twix.
Better for me.
Yeah, that's true.
I love that. What's going on in your house that you can't get Twix?
Yeah.
Poverty.
Poverty.
It's like that. I mean, that is bad, isn't it? Sorry,
I'm not
kids.
bankrolled by a big church.
It's him buying all his podcast equipment and his kids starving because
Sorry,
of it.
kids. It's
Well,
only
you guys,
this
no.
week.
What happens is you guys get these mysterious little checks in the post. You're like, oh, it's from God. No, it's not.
I don't.
It's from someone in your church. You've just mentioned in a prayer that you're a bit poor.
I don't.
And they've decided to chuck something for your letterbox.
That has not happened to me for a very long time.
We don't get that in the real world, folks.
No, you don't. That's true. That's true.
I don't in pastoral ministry either. So,
Steve, you've got to drop more hints, man. You've got to drop more hints. One of my colleagues, they said to me, at Christmas, I'll give you a tip. At the beginning of your sermon, just say, "Oh, Christmas is coming up, everyone." Just to say, whiskey's my tipple. Not saying you have to buy anything. Just thought I'd just put it out there.
Yeah.
He told me last year he got 4 bottles. He said,
Great.
seriously do it, right? So I did it.
I mean,
Jenny said to me, Jenny was like, you crossed the line there.
Yeah.
She was like, that was out of order. I didn't get any
good for
whiskey,
Jenny.
but
Good.
no, she did.
Anyway, guys, this is a great conversation, and I enjoyed that a lot.
Me
Good.
too.
That was nice. It was good to
Good
hear
luck with
from
editing
you
it.
two.
Yeah.
You too, Steve. Thanks for sharing the story, man.
Okay.
Okay.
Right.
Peace out.
Hang
Shall I
on. Stay
stop
there.
recording?
Yes,
Are you
please.
going to land it?
Was that not enough for land?
Oh, okay. You've landed it. It's fine.
Good luck. We're all counting on you.
Oh, okay, fine. Let me think of quickly a better way. Wow.
I think you should just do it later on when you're doing the edit.
I'll add that. So thanks again, everyone, for joining us for another Christian podcast, especially today because this was a long one. So we really appreciate you sticking around again to the end. If I'm still talking to anyone, then it would be great if you could subscribe. Apparently that means that we get seen by more people. So if you think that's a good thing, then we'd appreciate it if you could do that. And we will see you again next time.